G'day ladies and gents, and welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome to Enduring Conflict in Simulation Battle Mode. Today we'll be taking out the P-38G. The P-38 is a United States Air Force BR 3.3 Rank 2 heavy fighter, and this is the lowest rating fighter in my lineup. This is the 3.3 to 4.7 battle rating Enduring Conflict. Now, this particular fighter, even though it is the lowest rank aircraft in my lineup, it's actually the fighter that I've put in my primary crew slot, as I love the way this thing flies under stick. It is a beautiful aircraft to fight and maneuver in, and it catches a lot of people by surprise. Now, as this is simulation battle mode in Enduring Conflict, battles tend to run longer, so you'll notice two things about the way I've done this one. It is recorded from the replay system, not from the live recording, because I was not recording live when I flew this battle. Basically, Enduring Conflict can last for hours. I don't have time to record everything, so I just keep the replay file and I record the pieces out of it to show. This was, however, all in one flyout, from takeoff all the way through to my interesting landing. However, the engagements themselves, as you will see, are recorded entirely from inside of the cockpit, including all of my head tracking, and I will walk you through exactly what is going on. The only downside of doing it this way is to keep all of the replay system crap, basically, off the screen in the flyout. Unfortunately, I lose the telemetry in the top left-hand corner of the screen, so you cannot see my engine temps, my altitude, my current airspeed, but I will talk you through these as we go through the engagement. So anyways, let's move on to Engagement 1. So today's battle takes place on the Rhur map for Enduring Conflict. We've just taken off from the second runway, and we took off with a 30-minute load of fuel. At the point of Engagement 1, we've been in the air for about 10 minutes and we're heading towards the northernmost runway on the German side. We're getting very close to the border on the middle of the map. Now, at this point in the engagement, I'm currently hunting. I spotted a dot off in the distance, which is what brought me over to this area in the first place. The aircraft was unidentified. I don't know what it was. However, it dove down towards the ground and I've actually lost it. So I'm holding the aircraft in a slight right-hand bank and I'm looking at the ground between the nose cone and the right-hand side engine cowling, looking for where the dot of the aircraft went to see whether or not I can reacquire it and find out whether or not it's hostile or not. Now, as I'm sure you've noticed, this particular battle was flown out just after the release of the new environmentals patch. Why I'm hunting down this dot, I actually want to throw a little bit of a shout out for Gaijin here and say well done. The combination of the new random ground battle events that take place during Enduring Conflict and especially the new finish to the night maps, but really the effects overall for all matches, credit where credit is due. You took a already fantastic looking game and made it look even better during the day matches, and you finally got rid of that horrendous night textures that you had for the night matches. I was actually hoping to do a sim battle just from the night match perspective, but unfortunately the only one I've had so far, I've only managed to get a single kill on a P2 in it, so I might throw the kill in on the end of the video. We'll find out later. And the new dynamic events inside of Enduring Conflict, fantastic gameplay improvement for Enduring Conflict. I love the idea, would love to see it in other game modes, but I'll talk more about that in just a moment because I've just located the target. He's flying low over the trees and I got a good glimpse of his belly there for a second. It's a Focke-Wulf 190. The 190 pulls over hard left and manages to avoid my first burst. He wasn't completely without awareness. I got the jump on him by holding altitude for as long as I did. However, he did see me coming in and was maneuvering defensively from the moment that I was within gun range. My second burst was poorly aimed. Third burst went straight into the back of the aircraft. Looked like I hit directly on the rear of the engine. And looks like I punched through the fuel tank as well and have fireballed the entire plane. We've got fuel smoke, we've got coolant smoke, we've got oil smoke. That plane's dead. I'm just rolling back and forth at the moment to see whether or not I can confirm the kill, and there it is. The pilot has bailed out, you can see the parachute, and at this point I finally got my notification of the kill. However, during that engagement for a second I thought I heard another engine note. I wasn't entirely sure whether or not there was another hostile there, I hadn't seen it, so full power to WEP, pull the aircraft into a high angle of climb, and I'm about at 25 degrees at the moment, and pull hard back for altitude, constantly checking my rear to see whether or not anyone's trying to follow me. As it turned out, there wasn't, but after fireballing an aircraft, it's good practice to get the hell out of the area anyway, just in case somebody is there. Now from here I pull back to around 10,000 feet, pull back to about 80% throttle so I don't overheat the engines, and I begin to cruise following the border between the German and the American sides on this particular map at the time, looking for additional targets. After about 12 minutes of flying around not detecting anything, I finally come across a notification that one of the random ground battles has started, so I decide to head over that way to see whether or not I can find another aircraft. And sure enough, flying over the combat zone, I immediately detect 3 dots. One of them breaks away, and as I close in on it, I manage to identify it as a Bf-109 G2. Now the G2 is easily the most powerful version of the 109 available in this bracket of enduring conflict. It's extremely fast, in the right hand surprisingly manoeuvrable, with both great acceleration and energy retention. And this particular G2 pilot was not caught unawares. He knew I was coming, which is precisely why he broke away from the engagement. He was setting it up for a one-on-one. Now, while the G2 is an absolutely fantastic aircraft, it does have one critical flaw when it's being flown in simulation battle. Behind the pilot's head and wrapping up over the top of his head is a thick piece of armour that's supposed to prevent him from shrapnel coming through the rear of the canopy and killing the pilot. And it does that very well, but it also blocks all visibility behind the aircraft for about an arc of 25 degrees and almost 40 degrees up and above the rear of the aircraft. You'll notice the pilot is turning rather aggressively, and you would think in something like a 109, yeah, that can be done, but why doesn't he open up the gap? He's turning the plane so he can see me. The metal plate is continually getting in the way because I keep putting myself behind him in that giant blind spot. Now, if you listen carefully to the engine note of the aircraft, I'm aggressively working the throttle as well as folding the flaps in and out in order to be able to maintain these turns, keeping myself on the rear. The G2 is a superior plane to the P-38G. However, the longer I can keep myself in that blind spot, the longer I can make him aggressively turn to try and keep his eyes on me, the more energy, speed and altitude he's blowing over time, until eventually I can pull the P-38 around hard, line up the shot, and once again the American Universal rounds in both the cannon and the machine guns don't let me down, lighting the aircraft on fire with a single smooth burst. Now, even though the target has been fireballed, push the throttles to maximum and climb almost vertical using my airspeed, and then fold over to watch him. I wasn't entirely sure at this point if the fire had gone out or not. I can see the smoke trail and see that he is trying to turn back on my location. Once again, take altitude again. I know he won't be able to get up here, not with that kind of damage. And then I spot a couple of diverging smoke trails heading out towards the ground and realise parts have fallen off his aircraft. At this point, the smoke trail just sort of stops mid-air. I'm not entirely sure where he went, but I got the kill notification at about this moment. So he went down, I just didn't see the crash itself. But that's my second kill for the match. Unfortunately, I'd been in the air for so long at this point that I only had 8 minutes of fuel left. So time to start heading back towards the runway. Which of course brings us to engagement 3 and the final engagement of this video. And this was the one that I wasn't looking for. At this moment I'm now down to 6 minutes worth of fuel. I'm about 2 minutes flight time, give or take, away from the nearest runway. And then I hear the engine sound and the sound of the cannons from behind. So I push the P-38 into an aggressive dive and then pull it up sharply and roll the plane hard in order to try and throw off the pursuer. I am checking over my shoulder to see whether or not I can spot the target. I do see a dot back there, but it's too hard to identify what it is. The sound of those cannons, however, sounded a lot like MGFF, so I'm betting Focke-Wulf 190. Now this engagement is a serious problem, with only 6 minutes worth of fuel left, 2 minutes away from the runway, and now having to push the aircraft into WEP in order to try and get my airspeed up to maximum. I'm not really carrying enough fuel at this point. I'm fine on ammo, but not carrying enough fuel to engage a 190. Now at this point I take a hit, no critical damage done to the aircraft, it was just shell impacts, nothing actually broke. Roll the aircraft again just to make sure he can't get solid aim on anything else, and I can hear the engine note behind me now. I'm almost positive it's a 190. At this altitude I can't outrun a 190, so all I can do at this point is try and avoid as best as I can, keep myself as low to the ground as possible, making myself difficult to hit, and try and make it to my airfield where I can get some support from the AAA around my base. And at that point I can see whether or not he's going to try and continue the engagement or whether or not I'm going to have the opportunity to land. Now, the runway's coming up on the right hand side. I've managed to close to it and keep myself alive, but I can see him dropping down on my rear at the moment, so I roll the plane hard and pull for elevation as much as I can. Take the plane almost completely vertical. Now as we roll over, I throttle back to 0, let the 190 overshoot directly over top of the airfield and directly over the top of my Allied AAA, push the throttles back to maximum in order to get airspeed and hammerhead the aircraft back towards the ground, gaining airspeed as quickly as I can, and then pull back on the throttles to try and conserve fuel and see exactly what he does. Now, pulling the aircraft up like that was a considerable risk, but it did pay off and it did get the aircraft off my 6, and I did confirm it was a 190 as it flew past. However, I did lose visual on the aircraft during the maneuver, especially during the hammerhead. I had no idea where it went. Thankfully, Allied AAA does a really good job of pointing a nice straight line directly towards the aircraft. At this point, I could have gone back and possibly landed, maybe. In fact, in all honesty, at this point, I should have, without question, gone back and tried for a landing regardless. I've just ticked down under 2 minutes worth of fuel, so my fuel light is now flashing at me. However, for some reason I chose to follow the 190 to see exactly what it was going to do. Initially it looked like it was going to just go for altitude and get the hell away from the airfields after the AAA engagement, and I thought maybe it had been clipped by the AAA and taken some damage. And then it aggressively rolled over and went back into a dive. This guy's not disengaging, he was just getting some distance on the AAA before coming back into the fight. So we go into our third engagement. Try to get a shot into the nose of the 190 as it pulls up and then roll the aircraft hard in order to avoid return fire. At this point I just want to say I know Gaijin's going to be allowing us to do some serious customization to our tanks very soon. I would like them to do something with aircraft cockpits as well, because I want to rip this goddamn mirror off the top of the P-38G's canopy so I can actually see what's going on above me. Now at this point I'm very lucky to be alive. I heard a sound, or what sounded like another engine, coming up behind me, turned my head quickly to look back and didn't see the 190 bank in hard. It goes head on, fires its guns past. Thankfully nothing hits. Go into combat flaps, pull the plane around quickly, and at this point my complaint about the mirror makes sense. I actually didn't see the Focke-Wulf 190 pull up and over like that because he was behind my mirror the whole time, but thankfully I managed to spot him, bank in to come in for another shot as he drops in low. Now his turns here don't seem quite as aggressive as normal. I'm not entirely sure at this point whether or not he knows exactly where I am either. Continue to follow him through a nice smooth turn, line him up, and pull the trigger, and I actually score hits then. I managed to hit him directly in the fuselage just behind where the pilot is. However, the hits do no damage, or at least they appear to do no damage. There's no smoke trail, I didn't see anything fall off the aircraft, so I bank over hard right and then give full left rudder in order to get a nice wide arc to see whether or not he actually goes down, whether or not I did do enough damage. Sadly no, he banks away and is beginning to open up a gap away from me, and at this point I realised I'm in the last seconds of my fuel load. So I've now broken off to the left and I'm looking for a place to land the P-38. I've moved too far away from the runway to ever make it home, and there we go, we're now out of fuel. And unfortunately, of all the areas that I could have chosen to run out of fuel and have to emergency land a P-38, I have to pick one of the most heavily forested parts of the map in a section that has near no clearings long enough to actually put a P-38 down. I find the best one I can considering my lack of options and try and put it down. I managed to get the plane down rather gently, however the right prop digs in on the uneven ground and I spin the plane. However, that's not where this ends. That was the 190A1 coming in to try and get guns on me, and instead he buries it nose first straight into the ground right next to me. You know, I am very sure that my pilot managed to get out of that wreck and walk his way back the runway. I don't think his did. Anyways, ladies and gents, that was Enduring Conflict 3.3 to 4.7 on Rhur. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.